The Sime foundry is located in the industrial area of Verona, near the major link roads and transportation routes. The production plant is able to produce cast iron parts with countless shapes, starting from very few raw materials. The adaptation of a project selected from the extensive Sime catalog, using an external project, developing a new project. The development of a new heat exchanger starts with the technical requirements provided by the customer. We come up with an initial basic project, which is then improved by a university modeling and calculation center. The initial design is developed for the exchanger and its parts. Next, we build the equipment required to manufacture the first series. Specific tests determine whether it fulfills the technical specifications expected by the customer. If necessary, the design is revised and the equipment is optimized until it fulfills the set objectives. The next step is defined by the manufacturing process on an industrial scale. Having established the definitive design for the exchanger and its parts, the following elements are produced: the patterns of the external shapes and the patterns of the internal hollow parts, known as cores. The production procedures, the programs, and the cycles of the various phases of the melting process are also defined. After the industrialization phase, the production phase follows. The production process is divided into two main phases. The first step involves preparing molten cast iron. Its characteristics need to fulfill strict parameters, which are controlled through constant testing. The cast iron is tested twice every hour using the carbon equivalent test. Every 2 hours, the technology lab draws samples to run strict chemical analyses with a mass quantometer. Every 4 hours, a mechanical traction test is run to measure the quality of the produced cast iron with certainty. The coke, the steel scrap, and the flux are carried from the raw materials yard and loaded into the cupola furnace in precise proportions. Inside the cupola furnace, the temperature reaches over 1,400 degrees to melt the raw materials and obtain cast iron, i.e., an iron and carbon metal alloy. The second step involves making a series of molds that the molten cast iron will be poured into. The sand molds can be reproduced in almost an infinite range of shapes. The shape of the cast iron piece is achieved by the impression the pattern leaves in the sand. The molded sand is contained in a metal frame known as a flask. If hollow products are made with the mold, the core must be placed inside, reproducing the empty part inside the finished iron casting. To close and complete the mold, the pattern is pressed into the sand by a second flask, which is then placed on top of the first one. The pouring gate is set up inside the second flask so that the molten cast iron can flow into the mold. After casting, the cast iron products are left to cool on the floor for 50 minutes, then taken out of the flasks and placed on vibrating platforms to clean off the sand produced by the core breaking up inside. Next, the 700-meter-long air cooling carousel and shock blast unit for the final cleaning of the manufactured pieces. The cast iron pieces are therefore ready for mechanical processing and hydraulic seal testing on each single casting and the assembled exchanger with multiple castings. The main industrial production phases are carried out at the Verona foundry plant. Machining processes and final testing, on the other hand, are carried out at the facility in Legnago.